to this event. We're very lucky to have the Deputy Consulate General of Israel to the Midwest, Mr. Shahar Arieli. Okay, as you all know, we had a display earlier in Stewart Center, which was titled The Palestinian Wall of Lies. That was put on by the David Horowitz Freedom Center. We had those materials from them. Basically, our goal here, and in presenting that, was to present a side that is not often shown here on campus. And if you will recall, a couple of years back, there were demonstrations from opposing viewpoints that basically there was nothing to combat that. So what we have decided to do is bring in someone that is very educated in these matters to speak on these. We're standing up for Israel, which is basically our aim. This is going to be an open and honest forum and discussion. Okay, if you all would like to participate, and if you have questions or if you have comments, please feel free to do so at the end. Okay, please respect Mr. Arieli. He drove a long way from Chicago, and it would be nice to show him some respect, let him get through what he has to offer, and then we will open it up. He's allotting a lot of time for question and answer. Basically, how this is going to go, he's going to speak, and again, open it up for forum. If you feel compelled to shout out before then, I will ask you to calm down and kind of just wait till we get through. If it keeps up, you will be asked to leave. I don't think it'll get there, but anyway. Want to introduce? Yeah.
Oh, could you just tell us which groups are sponsoring this?
Yes,
event?
ma'am. This is the Purdue University College Republicans. In coordination, this event is with the Israeli Coalition at Purdue. So that is who we have. So we have, without further ado, Deputy Consulate General to the Midwest, Mr. Shahar Arieli. I'm sure he can give a better introduction.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to have an interesting discussion with you. Somehow I get the feeling that it's going to be interesting. Look, I know this lecture was at least the way it was, the way the publicity went, to deal a lot about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which for sure I'm going to do, but I would like to put it in some context before, because I think in many ways the attention that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict got over the years did not serve the peoples of the Middle East, and I think with what is happening right now in the Middle East, people do come to realize that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not the central conflict in the Middle East, and it is not the reason for the instability and for the unrest that the Middle East is so famous for. In fact, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was used for a long time as a red herring, as a smoke screen, trying to cover for the real conflict and the real problem that the Middle East is suffering from it. And by now, I think people are starting to get a better understanding. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to focus a little bit on the real conflict in the Middle East, on the real cause for instability in the Middle East, and then I will refer to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which in many ways suffers from the very same problem that troubles the Middle East in general. So, when we're speaking about the Middle East, we're trying to figure out what is going on there, especially now. We can say that in many ways the Middle East is a part of the world that skipped a century. In many ways, the 20th century, all the achievements of the 20th century, all the developments of the 20th century, in many countries of the Middle East, they are not present. So if we look at the advancements in democracy, if throughout the 20th century, about how the economies of the world evolved, in terms of economical development, in terms of human rights. Unfortunately, the Middle East was not a real part of that. As you know, I represent the state of Israel. We suffered from it. We suffered from the fact that Israel is the only state, the only country in the Middle East with a democracy which is functioning. Maybe now Iraq is becoming more and more democratic. That is something good. We feel that if there were more democracies in the Middle East, it would be easier for us. In terms of economical development, let me just throw some figures at you. They say that it's good to throw figures, so let me try. If you take the GDP figures, the gross domestic product, the size of the economy. So if you take the economy of Israel, which is a state, which is a country with 7 million people, Israel has the same GDP in absolute numbers as Egypt with its 80 million people, Jordan with its 6 million people, Syria with its 20 million people, Lebanon with 5 million people, the Palestinian Authority with between 4 to 5 million people. All of these countries combined, they have roughly 120 million people. Israel has 7 million people, and it's roughly the same size of the economy. So when I'm speaking about lack of economical development in the Middle East, that is what I'm speaking about. And don't get me wrong, I don't mean to brag about it, because being the richest kid on the block, which we are, doesn't really help your popularity. And it would be fair to say that Israel is not exactly popular in the Middle East. Look, in terms of literacy, in terms of books, it is well known that all of the countries of the Middle East together publish less new books every year than the small country of Greece in Southern Europe. That is another fact that shows you that the Middle East has a lot to make up for. And what is actually the reason for everything which is happening now? The thing is that while during the 20th century it was very easy to suppress, it was very easy to hold out information, it was very easy for the rulers of the Middle East, which were autocratic rulers, all of them, it was very easy for them to hide from the population on what they are missing. Now with the advancements of the internet, social media, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, people are starting to understand what they don't have, and they want it all back. And they want it all back now. That is the reason, basically, for what is happening. But make no mistake, a lot of it is about economics. Because if you look at the economies of the Middle East, most of them are growing, either they don't grow at all, or they grow in a rate of 3 to 4% a year. That is not bad if you're a developed country. But in these economies of the Middle East, when the rate of the growth of the population is much, much higher than that, you have young generations which are trying to enter the market, which are trying to enter the labor market, and they don't have any future. Because in order to create jobs for these millions of people who are entering the market, you have to grow at a rate of 10% at least. And no economy in the Middle East is doing that. So when we look at everything which is happening, the most important question, of course, for us, for Israel, of course, since we are located in the heart of the Middle East, but also for the US, the major question is where things are going. And we would really, no one would be happier than us if things will go towards more democracy, more freedom, more liberalism. Nothing can be better for us. It's a known fact of history that no two democracies were ever engaged in war between them. And we are a democracy, and we believe that as more and more countries in the Middle East will turn democratic, less chances are for another war, and that is something that none of us wants. But again, to be fair, it's not clear whether or not it's going in this direction. Because if we look at the experience of past revolutions in the Middle East, and there were revolutions in the Middle East, we look at the Iranian Revolution of 1979, it also started out as a movement for more freedom, more democracy. Those forces who overthrew the Iranian Shah in 1979, they were not the Ayatollahs, they were not the radicals. It took the radicals about 1 year to hijack the agenda of the revolution and to create in Iran an extreme religious theocracy, anti-West, anti-US, anti-Israel, you name it. That's the experience of 1979. By 2005, there was another revolution in the Middle East, this time in Lebanon. We had 1 million Lebanese marching in the street of Beirut, demanding that Beirut will come back to the days when it was called Paris of the Middle East during the 70s. Because until 2005, Syria controlled Lebanon. And by 2005, 1 million Lebanese, they decided they had enough. They want to free their country. They want something else for their future. They threw the Syrians out. With this, through those mass demonstrations in the street of Beirut, the Syrians could do nothing about it. And there was great hope in the air at 2005. But when we look back at the situation, when we look back at what happened to Lebanon, we see that by now the strongest force in Lebanon, both politically and from the military perspective, is the Hezbollah, which is, this is a strange creature, the Hezbollah. It is both a political party, which, to be fair, enjoys a lot of support from the people of Lebanon, but it's also a military organization, a terrorist organization, and stronger than the army of Lebanon. So although the Hezbollah controls Lebanon more from the shadow, not officially, they have ministers in the government, but the prime minister is not from Hezbollah. But still, nothing can happen in Lebanon without the approval of Hezbollah. This is the strongest organization in Lebanon. And it is very much, actually it's completely financed and backed and getting the instructions from Iran. Some other interesting facts. If we look at public polls which are published, which are done in the Middle East, well, actually, there are not a lot of public polls which are credible and were conducted in the countries of the Middle East. But one public poll from 1 year ago was done here in the States by an American university in cooperation with the Sadat Foundation, which cannot be suspected of being anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, anti-Middle East. And they try to see what the people of the Middle East think about international politics. So they surveyed, they did their survey in countries which are considered more pro-Western, like Egypt, like Morocco, like Jordan, and these were the results. Well, one figure which is not surprising is that 88% of the pollees saw Israel as a threat to them. While I may claim that it's not really based on reality, but that doesn't matter, that's what they think. But also 77% of them saw the US as a threat. And 70% of them, when they were asked what kind of leaders do you look up to, who do you see as role models, they named people like Hugo Chavez from Venezuela, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, Bashar Assad, the leader of Syria, Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, Osama bin Laden, and other figures, which the one thing they have in common is the fact that they are anti-West, anti-US, anti-West, of course, anti-Israel. So all these are warning signs, and I think that what we need to do is be realistic and acknowledge the fact that even though we would like to see the Middle East turn democratic, right now, the masses in the Middle East, the people of the Middle East, the Arab street is not crazy about Israel, and I'm saying that